What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and I'm here to take you through the most comprehensive NBA player prop preview for the Dallas Mavericks versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. If it's your first time checking out the channel, I invite you to subscribe because I do this every single day. I share my screen, we go through Outlier, I take you through all the key players, their matchups, their form lines, the odds. We talk about fantasy, what I like, what I don't like, and I do all this to give you all the information that you need to make the best bets possible. Now, in the most recent video, we did cover the Indiana Pacers versus the Boston Celtics. That game did not go the way I thought it would go. The Pacers played a lot better than I thought they would. They should have won that game, not going to lie. But the way the game really translated is if you took anybody for an over, you're going to cash that bet. So, not a fruitless venture. We did hit two bets with Obi Toppin overs, cash. We took Jaylen Brown overs, cash. Unfortunately, we took Al Horford under his PRA, which did not cash. And we also took Miles Turner, which did not cash. So that overtime, it helped us with Jaylen Brown, but it killed us some other players. Either way, not too much loss on that one. Hoping we get some bangers here in this one. If that sounds interesting, let's go. So we're kicking it off the way that we always do. Share an Outlier. If you did not know Outlier, I've got a 7-day free trial in the video link below. I encourage you to check it out if you've never used it before. Not only is it great for NBA, MLB, NHL, WNBA, and the upcoming NFL season, a great place to get all your data for your player proper needs. Now, in this particular game, firstly, the total points line set at 208, which is a low scoring game. The Timberwolves, they're 4.5-point favorites in this one. Mike Conley, Luka Doncic, game time decisions, but I do think they both play. Now, quick recap on what happened throughout the season. Firstly, the Timberwolves won 3 out of 4 meetings against Dallas. They had a plus 13.3 point differential over those 13 games. But what's important to understand about those regular season matchups is that the Mavericks were undermanned in most of those games. Luka Doncic missed 2 of the games. The Timberwolves won 118 to 110, and then they also won 121 to 84. Now, Kyrie Irving did not play in 3 of those games, and Dallas lost in all 3. So I wouldn't overreact to Minnesota's dominant form against the Mavericks throughout the regular season. Also, keeping in mind, the Mavericks, when they added PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, when they really started to take that leap, after the trade deadline, they did not face the Minnesota Timberwolves at all. So that regular season stuff, I'll probably throw that out the window, to be honest with you. Now, I might be a little bit biased in my opinions in this, and I apologize because I do want Dallas to win, but let's get a little bit logical in this one. I do think Minnesota does win, right? They've got a lot of size, they've got a lot of length. They pretty much outmatch the Mavs in terms of size, except for probably Luka Doncic, but he's going to get picked up by Jaden McDaniels anyway. Anthony Edwards most likely picks up the Kyrie Irving assignment. And then you got Nickeil Alexander off the bench, another great defender. They got Cat, Gobert, a lot of size in their 4 and 5, whereas PJ Washington doesn't have the same size. And even at the center spot, Gafford, nowhere near the size of Rudy Gobert. So the Timberwolves definitely have the size. They probably can't score as well as the Dallas Mavericks, but defensively, they are a problem. They also have Naz Reid off the bench, whereas Dallas Mavericks don't necessarily have that type of production off the bench. It really is Luka and Kyrie driving all of that. All right, let's jump straight into the picks and see if we can find some value, shall we? We played in Minnesota, so we do the right thing here and start on the road. When you're looking at the Dallas Mavericks, you got to start with Luka Doncic, who is the big dog around these Dallas Mavericks parts. Outlier, if you did not know, filters props with the highest hit rates. So the first one that comes to mind for me for Luka Doncic is this points prop, and it's his first quarter points prop. It's at 6.5. I believe that's the lowest it's been all postseason, which is pretty crazy. We've seen it up around 8.5 at some point in the Clippers series. It dropped to about 7.5 against OKC, and now we're seeing it 6.5 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, Luka's cashed this line in 8 of his last 10 games, and against the Timberwolves, he's cashed it in 4 straight games against them. Luka tends to cook early in that first quarter, so it's definitely a play that I like, knowing what Luka is like, plus the hit rates against this Timberwolves. So I think it's a really good play. The problem for me is that odds are at minus 130, and as a straight bet, probably not the best one out there, but if you are looking to build an entry on those fantasy apps, Chalkboard, Dabble, Prize Picks, Underdog, Sleeper, if you're looking to build one of those, then Luka to go over his points prop in the first quarter, it does appear to be a great look. Speaking of Chalkboard and Dabble, I won't plug this for too long, but I am an affiliate with both of those. I do have links in the video description below. They'll give you $10 when you sign up. Make your first deposit as well and make it rain. Feel free to rinse them. I hope you take them to the cleaners. And Chalkboard, they'll give you a deposit match. So you can have a bigger deposit, get more bonuses back, and give you more opportunities and chances to win big. So check those out. Video link description below. Now let's get through it. Luka first quarter, I do like it. What else do we like? Point prop for Luka, 28.5. He's cashed this in 3 out of his last 5 games against Minnesota. 3 straight games against Minnesota, he's gone over this line. Looking at his last 10 games, though, he's only covered in 5 out of his last 10, but he does come into this game with a fair bit of form. The last 2 games against OKC, 31 and 29 points. Minutes are going to be there. The question is, will the shot attempts be there? OKC did a great job limiting Luka's shot attempts. In that series, he shot the ball 20 plus times in only 3 out of the 6 games, which is quite low for someone who averages well over 20. If we look at the head-to-head matchups against the Timberwolves, we can see last 3 games against Minnesota, 20, 27, and 26 shot attempts. So they're probably better at contesting shots, but they're not necessarily taking them away from Luka. So I probably lean to the over on Luka's points because if he can get the volume, I think those buckets are going to come. But I think it's one of those games where you watch and see. Let's see how Luka plays against this Minnesota defense, who some would argue is the best defense in the league, if you know what I'm saying. If we think about how Luka plays offense and Minnesota plays defense, what have we got? Luka scores a majority of his points in the pick and roll. Minnesota Timberwolves, one of the best. In this playoffs, though, they're probably sitting mid-tier, middle of the pack when it comes to defending the pick and roll. They're not fouling very much. They're not giving too much away in terms of free throws. And within isolation, they're ranking near the middle as well. The way Minnesota has defended excellently throughout this postseason, they're not allowing spot-up shooters. And you don't have to worry about that with Luka Doncic. But for those of you who are probably thinking PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., I'll probably pump the brakes a little bit on that one. In terms of where are Minnesota giving up buckets, they're not really giving it up too much, but in the corners, in the restricted area, and in the mid-range, probably where they're most vulnerable. They've done quite well defending the 3. Above the break, number 1 so far in this playoff. So with Luka, I think there's a good opportunity that he gets his, but I just want to watch this game to see how Luka performs. At a line at 28.5, you're going to have some killer reads to take the over in game 1. So for me, I'm pumping the brakes on that. Looking at his assists, though, 8.5 assists for Luka. He's cashed this in 8 out of his last 10 games. Against Minnesota, though, he's only covered in 2 out of his last 5. He is averaging 8.8 assists, though, but in this sample size, he's only actually covered this line 2 out of the 5. Potential assists, not crazy high in so far against Minnesota. But one thing to keep in mind, PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, they were added after all these games were played anyway. So I'm not going to put too much stock into it, but similar to his points prop, this line is very high. It's a high line in the playoffs. The projected total, what was it, 208? We're probably not going to see too many points here. So Luka, he's going to rack up stats. That's what he does. But what you're betting on is for him to rack up enough stats to cover this line, which I can't confidently take. Rebounds for Luka, 8.5. He's covered this in 5 straight games in this postseason, covered it in 5 of the last 5 games against OKC, 7 of his last 10, but in head-to-head matchups, 2 out of his last 5 against the Timberwolves, and he's gone under in his last 2. So another one where I'd probably pump the brakes with Luka. If I had to, if gun to my head right now, if I had to take something, I might take the under in his PRA at 45.5, purely because it is a playoffs. Timberwolves, great defensively. They'll be looking to slow him down. They won't stop him, but 45.5 for anybody is a tough assignment. So for Luka, over 6.5 in the first quarter, probably the only thing that I can muck around with right now. For the rest of it, I'm going to have to wait and see. Next up, we got Kyrie Irving. Now, Kyrie Irving, I'm projecting to have a big series. Wasn't overly effective in OKC. They did an excellent job limiting his effectiveness, whereas this Minnesota defense plays somewhat different. But his points prop in 20.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10 games against OKC. Against the Timberwolves, he's played them twice since he joined the Dallas Mavericks. Once this season, where he scored 35 points and Dallas won. And then once last season where he scored 36 points. So Kyrie has had his success against Minnesota in the past. Line at 20.5, you've got to lean to the over. If you just think about what Kyrie is capable of, 20.5 is nothing. You can see over his last 20, 14 of 20 games. if you look at the season stats, 53 out of 70 games, Kyrie has gone over this 20.5. That's definitely the way that I would be leaning. Odds of minus 140, though, again, not the greatest odds for a straight bet, but this could be another. If we're building a big ass fantasy entry in this one, Kyrie Irving to go over his points prop, I do like it. If you had 100 chances to take Kyrie to go over 20.5, he'd probably hit that to 75% of the time, and you'll be rolling in dough. Don't be discouraged because the OT shit didn't pop off. Their defense was wild down the perimeter, whereas Minnesota, somewhat different. So I'd be backing Kyrie for a bounce back in this series. If this series does go 6 games, he probably hits 20.5 at least 4 times. Looking at Kyrie assists, though, 4.5 is the line. This one's juiced to the gills at minus 145, 6 out of his last 10, but he's also gone over in both of his games against the Timberwolves, 6 and 5. Not putting major stock into that. Small sample size, plus PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. But the one thing you do need to factor in is Kyrie's assist numbers have only gone up since PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford joined the squad. So I'd probably lean to the over on Kyrie assists as well. Looking at his rebounds, 3.5 for Kyrie. 5 out of his last 10. And again, rebounding very well against Minnesota Timberwolves. 5 and 8 boards against them. What would be interesting to see is who does Kyrie match up against? I think most likely it's going to be Mike Conley. That makes the most sense, but they're going to do what they can to switch on Kyrie and attack him as much as they possibly can. But at the same time, I think the rebounds could be a good look for Kyrie. I'm not discouraged by the fact that the OKC form wasn't great. He was picking up very well on the defensive end. And I think against this Minnesota Timberwolves, unless he gets switched on the Ant the whole time, I think he's a good chance of getting some boards too. So as you can see, his rebounds line, juiced. Points line, juiced. Assist line is juiced as well. I personally might even look at the over in his PRA, 29.4. So he's hit that at a 76% hit rate so far on this season, which is a great sample size. In the playoffs, we might see Kyrie get at least, 35 to 40 minutes. Looking at his minutes where he's played 35 or more, 35 or 44 games this season, 80% hit rate. A lot of the times he's gone under, have been most recently against OKC. So he only went under against the Clippers once, this PRA. A lot of the damage was done against OKC in terms of the under. So, but again, the over for Kyrie, that's juiced as well at minus 130. So what I'm thinking is you can either get an alternate line and take the over 30, minus 119, or the other look there, if we're looking at straight bets, we can take Kyrie and maybe take him over 21.5 points. I don't believe the hit rate changes down to 71%. So he's actually finished on 21 on the dot quite a few times. But a straight bet for Kyrie points or even just moving his PRA up a little bit, I think that could be a good look in this one because Kyrie, I'm predicting him to go, no, I wouldn't say big, but better, right? One other thing I wanted to look at real quick was he's under in his first quarter points because that's hitting 700 games in a row, it feels like. But 10 out of his last 10, he's hit the under in his first. When did this start? Pretty much started in the playoffs. So Kyrie's gone under in the first quarter in every single game in the playoffs, which is just wild. 1 out of 2 against Minnesota. So look, if he goes under in the first game, I might be willing to entertain it in the following games. Start of a new series, new matchups, different team. Things could be different. So I'd be a little bit hesitant taking a look at that. We now have PJ Washington. So he's not going to have much sample size up against Minnesota. He's going to have no sample size up against Minnesota since he joined Dallas. So we're really just looking at recent form and how Minnesota have defended his position. His points on at 12.5. He's hit that in 4 of his last 10. 3 of those games were when he went berserk against OKC. In terms of how well Minnesota defends fours, extremely well. 3rd fewest points to power forwards on the season. You've got to look at 3-pointers made. If you're talking about PJ Washington, his line's only at 1.5. Now that could be a good look. The Timberwolves are now the 6th fewest 3-pointers made to power forwards, but PJ Washington at 1.5, that feels like a bit of a steal to me. If you look at his last 20 games, he's covered this line in 15 of 20, a 75% hit rate, which is crazy. Minnesota, if you think about Aaron Gordon, for example, Aaron Gordon was given open looks all day from the corner. If you think about how Minnesota have been defending in the playoffs, there's 16 teams playing in the playoffs, right? Minnesota, they rank, about 8th or 9th. So that puts them in the bottom half of teams that allow corner 3-pointers so far in this playoffs. So PJ Washington could find his spots on this one. We're thinking about how he scores. 29% of his shots and points come from the left corner and 13% come from the right corner. So we're talking about 42% of this man's points coming from the corners. Now, Minnesota, great at defending spot-up shooters, although the position on the floor is great. And for PJ Washington to make only 2 of them at these odds, I think that's a good look right here. Because if we think about his attempts, over his last 20 games, he's averaging 6.7 attempts and 2.7 made 3-pointers. His last 2 games against OKC, he didn't shoot very well. 2 from 7 and 2 for 5. But you know what? We only need 2 3-pointers for PJ Washington to cash. So at these odds at 1.5, definitely something I am willing to entertain. If you're looking at PJ Washington's rebound, that could be a good look for you as well. So his line is 5.5. He's covered this in 12 out of 20 games, averaging 6.75 rebounds. The challenge, Minnesota allow the second fewest rebounds to power forwards on the season. Now, they've obviously got a big lineup with Cat, Nas, Gobert, all in their front court. The problem there is Cat and Nas, they stretch the floor, and PJ Washington necessarily going to be camping the paint out. So he may not be in the position to get a lot of rebounds, which worries me because he's going to be defending a shooter at all times. So I'd be a little bit hesitant taking the rebound line, but the 3-point line for PJ, that's something that I can muck around with. Now let's check to see, was there anything else Outlier was showing me on PJ? I'm not going to take under 1.5 rebounds in the first quarter. That's just crazy. All right. Nothing more on PJ. Who else do we have? DG, Daniel Gafford. So, tough matchup for Daniel Gafford in this one. Going to have some big boys out there. Chet Holmgren is nothing when you think about Cat and Gobert. They got more size, probably more aggressiveness. Probably not as skillful, but when it's big man on big man, Daniel Gafford's got a difficult task ahead. So his points line, 8.5. He's hit this in 10 out of his last 20 games, averaging 9.2. Did see a big lift in the playoffs. One strong game against the Clippers, and then he covered this line in 5 or 6 games against OKC. But this team is not OKC. So the Minnesota Timberwolves, they do allow the 13th fewest points to centers on the season, which is close to middle of the pack. So they're not the best at slowing them down. Be interesting to see what type of coverage Rudy plays. If he gets caught, he'll get caught in that pick and roll with Luka. I think they're going to be targeting Rudy a lot. I think he's going to switch or he's going to come out for sure. I don't think we see a lot of drop coverage for Rudy Gobert in this game, which could open up Daniel Gafford for some easy points. If he does play a lot of drop coverage, though, that could make it difficult for Gafford to get some points, but I don't see them doing that. It's not smart to play Luka in the drop. So Daniel Gafford points, that could be a good look, is what I'm saying. It could be. Not saying it is, but it could be. The next thing I wanted to think through was just the rebounds and how he gets these rebounds. So if he's defending Rudy Gobert, it means he's going to be in position, you could say, to get rebounds. But line at 6.5, it is a plus money play. He has cashed this well, but keeping in mind, up against OKC, easy matchup. Over his last 20 games, he's only hit this in 8 of the 20 games. He is on the road as well, and the Timberwolves allow the 5th fewest rebounds to centers on the season. So, yeah, it could be a difficult one. I'd lean to the under here, but at 6.5, I don't know if I'm man enough to take that. But I'm definitely leaning that way on the under. Assist, 119 for Daniel Gafford to get an assist. He cashed that in 72% of games this season, 14 of his last 20 as well. So I brought this up the last time the Dallas Mavericks played. Take a look at Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively to get 1 assist. It's not such a bad play. He's sweating quite a bit. He'll play 20 to 25 minutes, and you're looking for 1 dime. If it means anything, he played the Minnesota Timberwolves once this season. He did get 1 assist, although I don't believe he was playing with the Dallas Mavericks at the time, but had 2 potential assists in that game. Let's put it this way. If the Minnesota Timberwolves put a lot of pressure on the screen when on the pick and roll, when Luka comes off those screens, he's going to find Daniel Gafford rolling to the rim. Daniel Gafford has to make a good drop-off, pass to the corner. That assist could come easy, not going to lie. So I'll lean about a little bit further. It's tough to look at their last series. Denver has Jokic as a center, so different types of assists there. But maybe if we look at Minnesota versus the New Orleans Pelicans, what I'd be interested to know is how many assists did Jonas Valanciunas get in that series? Because that could be an interesting look. Actually, let's open up StatsMuse right now. Let's go center game log against Timberwolves. in the playoffs. Actually, the team have versed the Pelicans. What am I talking about? They versed the Phoenix Suns. My bad. That was OKC. But let's look. So this is what I've done. So try and look to see if Daniel Gafford has some assist potential. So if we look at, we know that Jokic is going to get assists, so it's not a great look there. But if we take a look at this Phoenix series, now Yusuf Nurkic can get some assists as well. So that he's one of the most budget versions of Nikola Jokic you're going to find. Very capable of getting assists. So Nurkic got some assists as well in that series. Just checking to see. 4 assists is where I think his line would be at, 3.5 to 4.5. So Nurkic went for 4. Actually, I'm looking at rebounds. Am I drunk? He went for 1, 4, 1, and 5. Drew Eubanks probably plays a role to Daniel Gafford. Eubanks didn't get assists in the whole series. So, yeah, probably a little bit hesitant, to be honest. Let's see how this game goes. If Daniel Gafford gets 1 assist in this game, his line's not going to move. So I wouldn't sweat that, but I think it's a good look for any future players, provided that line stays the same. Next up, we're going to take a look at Derrick Jones Jr. He was great last few games in that OKC series. They were leaving him wide open, daring him to shoot. Man got buckets. So looking at his points, 8.5 is the line. Last 3 games, 17, 19, 22, covering this in 7 of his last 10 games. In head-to-head matchups against Minnesota, in this season, he's played 3 times. So 3, 15, and 12. So he has covered this against him in the past. But one thing to keep in mind, Kyrie was missing from a lot of these games. Luka missing for them too. So probably a little bit difficult. He was averaging 9.7 attempts. If you look at his last 10 games, he's taking 9 attempts on average, but his attempts against OKC were a lot higher than I expect them to be in this game. So Minnesota, very different to OKC. I don't think they're going to dare Derrick Jones to shoot. They're going to back themselves to slow Kyrie and Luka. They're not going to eliminate them from the equation and force Derrick Jones Jr. to get buckets. Minnesota did a great job. They limited MPJ like mad. They pretty much shut down everyone, to be honest. No one was having a great game. Jokic had a few. Jamal Murray might have had a game. MPJ had nothing. Aaron Gordon might have had 1 good game. So Derrick Jones Jr., I'm not overly keen on his points prop. I don't think he gets it that easy. Rebounds, 3.5 for Derrick Jones. 5 out of his last 10. He did cover this in 3 straight games against Minnesota, though, which is wild. But again, there's no Luka, no Kyrie, or probably more Luka, if anything. Luka is their number 1 rebounder. But let's look at games with Luka in the lineup. So he played in 2 games with Luka in the lineup, actually. 4 boards and 10 rebounds for Derrick Jones Jr., averaging 12 rebound chances, which is pretty wild. In his last 10 games, he's only averaging 7.3 rebound chances. He's averaging 3.7 boards, and that's why we're seeing a line at 3.4. So what I would be curious to know, damn, I was sharing the wrong tab. I do this every single time. My bad. Derrick Jones Jr. This is his prop points lines. This is how he's gone against Minnesota. Not overly keen on it, but his rebounds. Check it out. 3 straight games against Minnesota, covering his boards, averaging 7.6. Luka's going to be playing in this game, so he's averaging 7 boards in the 2 games against Minnesota with Luka in the lineup. Now, what I would be interested to see is who is he defending? Because I would assume he would be defending Ant-Man. And if he is defending Ant-Man, I wonder how effective he's going to be getting some rebounds. That's my only question. So look at this game that happened on the 8th of January. So I'm just heading over to NBA.com right now as we speak, checking out the box score, and then in the box score, we can see what the matchups look like. So in that particular game, Luka and Kyrie played. So it's probably the most realistic measure we can get. Dallas win that game 115 to 108. Looking at the box score in that game, what do we see? Anthony Edwards had a strong game, and Karl-Anthony Towns had a strong game. Naz Reid had a strong game. Timberwolves still lost because in Dallas, Luka scored 34, Kyrie scored 35, Tim Hardaway had 12 off the bench, Derrick Jones had 12, 10 rebounds, offensive rebounds. And this, look, they had Grant Williams back then. So let's take a look at the matchups. I'm just curious to see who did Derrick Jones Jr. defend. So as a defender, Derrick Jones Jr., so he spent the majority of his time on Anthony Edwards. Now, Anthony Edwards was 3 from 7 when defended by Derrick Jones Jr., scoring 8 points. So it's not too bad. So he spent a lot of time on Ant-Man, bit of Nas, and a bit of Karl-Anthony Towns. But Yeah, so defending Ant-Man. So who did all the defending? Well, this could honestly, this could be a good look, right? One thing to keep in mind is in that OKC in Denver series, Contavious Caldwell Pope was the defender on Ant-Man, if you remember. And his rebound prop was money. I think the line for him was at 2.5. So check it out. I'm on StatsMuse. So his rebound line was at 2.5, I believe. Yeah, 2.5. And it was pretty juiced. The line was at 2.5 against Minnesota. And check out his rebound numbers in that series. In 7 games, he had 2, 3, 4, 1, 5, 4, and 6. So despite being the main defender on Ant-Man, those rebound opportunities came from KCP. And Ant-Man, he's not going to crack the boards. So the ball bounces around you. You could have a good chance at hitting it. So Derek Jones Jr. at 3.5 at plus money, that might be something I'm willing to entertain. If we look at his last 10 games, didn't ultimately cash very well against OKC. He was the primary defender on OKC. I mean, on SGA, but SGA puts it up pressure. Ant-Man, probably a little bit emotional in the way that he scores, a bit more conventional, I would say. So Derek Jones Jr. to get some boards. I don't necessarily hate that, but I'll look into that one a little bit further. Who else have we got from the squad that we want to look through? Josh Green off the bench, Tim Hardaway off the bench. There's nothing I could really call out for those guys. Maybe Derek Lively. So outlier filtering this as the best play, and it's for him to get 1 assist. So Derek Lively's had 1 assist in 9 straight games. The odds, same as Daniel Gafford's, had 3 assists in that last game against OKC. It's been a spark plug off the bench. He's played 2 games against the Minnesota Timberwolves, averaging 1 assist in that series. This most recent, that game, actually, he didn't even play in that game with Kyrie and Luka as well. But his most recent game against Minnesota, he did have 2 assists. Now, I, for one, think Derek Lively probably gets more minutes than Daniel Gafford. He's probably of the two, less injury prone out of the two. And I think he probably matches up better up against this Minnesota team. I think they're both going to get a lot of minutes, not going to lie. This Minnesota team is very big. I actually don't mind the Derek Lively over 0.5 assists. It's 1 assist. It's not crazy, but Lively, he's coming up big in these playoffs, big moments. I think he's going to get the opportunities here. I don't see him getting in too much foul trouble. Rudy's not going to trouble him too much in that regard. So the assist for Derek Lively, I don't mind. But let's talk about his points. 7.5. He's cashed this in 7 out of his last 10. He hit this in 1 out of 2 games against the Timberwolves. And his minutes he was playing starter minutes where he scored 15, bench minutes where he scored 2. So I'd probably sit on that and wait. Rebound 6.5, went under in both games against the T-Wolves. So even with that, I'm probably not too keen on his rebound prop. But I think the assist one, man, to get 1 assist, why the hell not? I don't think it's such a bad play. The 1 assist is hitting at such a high rate. Anything can really, it could be a handoff. It could be an offensive rebound to a shooter. It could be him diving to the rim, finding someone in the corner. Like it's not hard to get assist out there. Shit. All right. Anyway, before I digress any longer, let's get into the Minnesota Timberwolves. Starting with Anthony Edwards, 28.5 points, 4 out of his last 10. He went under in 3 straight games now against Denver. He only covered this line twice against Denver. Keep that in mind. He's averaging 28.5 in his last 10, though. When he does go over, this man flies over. In head-to-head matchups against Dallas, he's covered in 3 out of his last 7, averaging 25.7 points per game. He's versed Dallas 4 times this year. 9, 44, 36, and 9. He's had a good game and a bad game at home, and a good game and a bad game on the road. Now, if you talk about how Dallas played defense all year, not great at defending 2 guards at all. They allowed the 3rd most or the 4th most points to shooting guards on the season. So it is a good matchup for Anthony Edwards at home. Could come out on fire. But game 1 at 28.5 points, the line's only set at 208. So I think he can definitely get his. I'm not willing to take it. I think the way I'm going to play Anthony Edwards in this series is really just to see how he reacts and how Minnesota reacts to depending on how he plays. If he has a terrible game in this one, I'll probably take him for the over in the next game. If he has a great game in this one, I'll probably take him for the under. Anthony Edwards. That's pretty much how his playoff season has gone. So, yeah, I'm happy to sit and wait on Edwards. His assist prop, 5.5. He's hit this in 2 out of his last 7 against Dallas, 1 out of 4 games this year, averaging 5.4 against Dallas. In his last 10, he's hit this in 5 out of his last 10 games. So, first game against Denver was his lowest total in his last 10, where he only had 3 assists. That game saw 207 points. So this I'd probably lean to the under. Under is a plus money play. It's not something I'm going to bet though, but that's the way that I'm probably leaning. Potential assists as of late, 9.8 potential assists in the last 10 games. He's averaging 5.9. Like, I don't feel like the massive edge against Dallas, 9 potential assists. So yeah, looking at his last 4 games, he's averaging 9 potential assists and he needs to get 6. So yeah, I'd probably lean to the under. He could blow it out of the water, but yeah, it's another one where I'd prefer to just see. And then his rebound prop, 5.5. He's only hit this in 2 of 7 games against Dallas. And in his last 10 games, he's hit this in 5 of the 10, averaging 5.9. Rebound chances, averaging 9 as well. Rebound chances against Dallas, 10.7. So yeah, there's no massive edge I can find right now. With these star players like Anthony Edwards, their PRA lines can be quite high. So his one's at 39.5. He cashed this in 41% of games this season. So 37 out of 90 games. So this includes the playoffs. Look at his last 10 games. 4 out of his last 10 he's cashed this in. And if you look at the head-to-head stuff against Dallas, he has cashed this in 3 out of 7 games against them. So 2 from 4 so far in the season. So he's had very quiet games and very big games. I think my way of betting Anthony Edwards is go hard or go home. Like, honestly, take him for 35 to 40 points. Don't settle for the over. I just don't see him finishing within that 28 to 34 points range. I reckon just bet a little bit less. Take him for 35. Or if you're feeling the other way for Anthony Edwards, take him for under 20. Like, get that plus money right there. Who knows? I might even take a look at both. I might play him both. He is on Bet365. I know that you can bet like points high and points low. I'd probably go to the points low and bet the under, and then on the high, bet the high, just to see. And if he finishes in the middle, then I'm a dickhead and I'm an idiot. But might be a different way to play Anthony Edwards because that's what we've seen so far. If we just look at his points prop, see how well this recipe would work, actually. Look at in the last 10 games. All right. So let me take a look. So Anthony Edwards, points high, we're looking at 35.5 points. And his points low, we're looking at 22.5 points. So the over 35.5 is plus 375, and the under 22.5 is plus 280. So in his last 10 games, he's gone under 22.5 in 4 of those games. So 4 out of the 6 games, he's gone under 28.5. He's gone under 22.5. And if you look at the over, he's gone over 28.5 4 times. And in all of those games, he went over 35.5. So if you look at the games against Dallas, the games he went over, 3 games, went over 35.5 twice. But if we're looking at this season, 4 games, he went under 22.5 in 2 of them and over 35.5 in 2 of them. I'm just saying, could we take a lick at both? I might. I'm willing to look like an idiot on this one. He might finish on 25 points and I'll lose both bets. But you know what? This is sports betting, baby. And I think it's all part of the journey. That sounds like a bit of fun. I might play that. I'm not suggesting you tell, just being completely transparent with where my mind's at. Who else do we have? We've got Karl-Anthony Towns. So I said it the last time the Minnesota Timberwolves play. Firstly, these guys zesty as hell. I know you guys would have seen that. You guys would have seen that press conference that he did. My Lord, this guy. Anyway, I know how to read him. I did have him as a strong lean to go over his points prop in that Game 7 against Denver. He cashed with another 23. Now he's up against the Dallas Mavericks, though. 20.5 is the line fat. 4 out of his last 10 games, he's covered 18.8 points. Doesn't look great, right? But check this work he's done against Dallas. 4 games against Dallas. He's covered this in 3 out of the 4, averaging 21 points per game. The one game he went under, played 27 and only took 12 shots. So he's only averaging 14.3 attempts per game in those Dallas games. If we look at his last 5, it's pretty much where he averages, though, 13.6. Makes a whole lot of sense. Now, my only concern with this, he's got a great record against Dallas so far in this postseason. I believe he hasn't been playing well at home. So let me double check this. Last 10 games at home. Ooh. So this is when the postseason started. So he played 6 games at home so far in the postseason. He's gone under this line in all 6 of them. Now, I know that Minnesota crowd be booing this zesty ass, but that's one thing to factor in. I do probably lean to the over the matchup with Dallas, but at the same time, he is at home. So I can find a reason not to bet it. So I probably won't. Well, actually, I'm not going to. What do I mean, probably? I'm not going to bet that shit. To you if you choose to. He's got great numbers against Dallas at home, 1 out of the 2. But yeah, not for me. No, thank you. Rebounds, 8.5 for that. He's covered this in 2 out of 4 against Dallas, averaging 10.2 boards. If we look at his last 10 games, he's covered this in 6 out of his last 10, averaging 9.5. His last 2 games against Denver rebounded very well. Now, if we think about the matchup for this one, Karl-Anthony Towns most likely picks up PJ Washington, or it could be Daniel Gafford. But either way, I think there's a good chance that he can get boards in this one. But I think what concerns me is probably the potential foul trouble. If he gets switched on to Luka, I can almost guarantee you he's going to foul him half the time. Like Luka's just built that way, whereas the Denver Nuggets, they don't really have many foul baiting machines out there. And if there's someone you can bait into a foul, it's Karl-Anthony Towns. Now you don't even have to bait him; he'll just foul you anyway. But if he gets switched on to Luka, I think foul trouble could be a concern for Cat. So I'm not keen to bet on him on this game. I want to watch it to see how he goes, and then we can make some adjustments from there. His assist line, 3.5. 2 out of his last 10 games. And if we think about how he's gone against Dallas, he's only hit this in 1 out of the 4. Potential assists, probably the issue. Dallas on the side, they did give up a whole lot of assists. But in the postseason, they've given up some assists too, but not many to power forward. So for Cat, I'd probably lean to the under, but not something I'm too game to bet on. Next up, Rudy Gobert. Let's check Rudy out. Rudy's points line, 12.5 points for Rudy Gobert. He cashed this twice in the 7 games against Denver, 5 out of his last 10. He's played Dallas 6 times, and he's gone over this in 4 out of the 6 games. Last time against Dallas, he did score 17 points. So in the 4 games against Dallas this season, 8, 20, 9, and 17, there's no correlation with home court advantage. Actually, there is. So the 2 home games against Dallas is where he scored 20 and 17 points. The 2 games on the road is where he went under. So that's quite interesting. Now, Rudy didn't score too much in that Denver series. Prior to that, against Phoenix, he was dominant. He was scoring a whole lot. So I hate to say it, I'd probably lean to the over here for Rudy Gobert. Look at his last 10 home games. We can break down the postseason. And in the postseason, 3 games at home against Phoenix, he went over in all 3. The 3 games against Denver, he went under in all 3. Now, Rudy probably going to have a bit more success than Chet Holmgren did. I'll tell you that. Depending on how much pressure they can put on the rim, how well he does offensive rebounding wise. But Rudy, I probably lean to the over. I probably just want to see a game first. That's all I'm saying. Probably just want to see a game because part of the reason why his points are lower is because Anthony Edwards being a bit more dominant with the ball and he don't pass to Rudy. Now, looking at his rebounds, 12.5, 5 out of his last 10 games, averaging 10.9 in head-to-head games against Dallas. He's covered this in 3 of 6, 12.5 as an average. His minutes, not very high against Dallas. A lot of this is regular season. But this season, he's covered this line in 1 of 4 games against the Dallas Mavericks. So you have to factor that in. At 33 minutes on average against Dallas. Over his last 5 games, he's playing 33 minutes. So we might not see too much of a difference in that. His potential rebounds, 22.5 as an average against Dallas on this series, had 1 massive game with 32 rebound chances, and that was the game that Dallas won. So, yeah, I'd probably be a little bit hesitant on the rebound front for Rudy as well. Really one of those things where you just got to watch it, see how it goes, and then see if there are going to be matchups or not. His assist prop, you'd have to be crazy to look at that. So, sorry for wasting your time. Who the hell else have we got? Where is the first half of my McParlay? Jaden McDaniels. Here he is. Here he is. So he was great to finish off that series against Denver. They dared him to shoot, and the man shot well. His points line has moved up slightly, 10.5. Last 2 games against Denver, 21 and 23 points. He's hit this in 5 of his last 10. If you look at his head-to-head matchups against Dallas, 5 out of his last 7 games, he's gone over this line. Minutes, 31 minutes, 9.1 attempts on average. I think that's similar to what he's been getting in the playoffs. Yeah, 9 attempts on average in his last 10 games so far in these playoffs as well. Look, it really could be a game he goes over. I think if Dallas are going to allow anybody to shoot, probably Jaden McDaniels. But the question is, after that Denver series where he absolutely smoked them, do Dallas want to take the same risk? That's what I'm questioning. And look, Wolves at home, Jaden McDaniels, good step up. So I wouldn't bet the under. Lean to the over, just not sure if I can take the bet. The other look is his rebounds, 3.5. He's hit this in 2 of his last 7 against Dallas. Now, if Jaden McDaniels is the guy chasing Luka Doncic around, it's going to be very difficult for him to get rebounds. That's all I'm saying. If you look at his last 5 games, he has covered in 2 out of the 5. But keeping in mind, Denver Nuggets sucked in those last 2 games, so everyone's getting boards. I think the interesting play for me is going to be on the defensive end here for Jaden McDaniels. Did cash his over in steals plus blocks in the last one. Let's take a look at it. 1.5 steals and blocks. It's minus 175, so that's not great. His cash, he killed it in Denver. 6 straight games against the Denver Nuggets went over his steals and blocks line. But if we look at the head-to-head matchup against Dallas, he's covered this in 2 out of 7 games against them. 1 out of the 4 games this series, which is pretty wild. So I think if he cleans up in this first game and gets a lot of steals and blocks, definitely one that we can look at for the next one. But for now, happy to sit and wait. We then have Mike Conley. So Mike Conley, a PRA beast against the Denver Nuggets. I wonder if he has similar form against Dallas. Points, we're getting 11.5 for Magic Mike Conley. The Dallas Mavericks were good at defending point guards in the regular season. He's hit this in 5 out of his last 10 games, averaging 11.3. And in head-to-head matchups against Dallas, he's hit this in 2 out of his last 5. 4 games this season, 14, 10, 9, and 10. So hasn't been hitting the mark against Dallas. Has been getting very close, though. But the points have not been there. I'm not willing to take Mike Conley for points today. Maybe his assists, but at 6.5, now I'm starting to question it. His line was at 5.5, 5.5 against the Denver Nuggets. It's moved up to 6.5. It is plus money after all, but his cash is in 5 out of his last 10, averaging 6.5 assists. Head-to-head against Dallas, though, 2 out of his last 5 games, 4 games in the season, he only cashed in 1 out of the 4 games. So we're not loving that. Rebounds for Magic Mike. Then even his rebound line's gone up to 3.5. So against Denver, that was at 2.5 the whole time. And he was cashing it quite well. This 3.5 has a pretty good hit rate. 7 out of his last 10. But check this shit out. Against Dallas, 1 out of his last 5 games, 1 of 4 games on the season. So Dallas is a different matchup. And given Mike Conley's lines, his points, rebounds, and assist line, they've all gone up 1. So I'm assuming his PRA is probably 22 to 23 points here. It's at 21.5. Hood mathematics has let me down. But even at 21.5, I'd consider looking at the under. So if we look at his last 10, though, he has hit this in 7 of his last 10, averaging 22. Against Dallas, he's gone under in all 4 games this season for his PRA. He's gone under this 21.5, which is why I was leaning that way. But I would have loved to see it at about 23. That would have been fucking fantastic. But at 21.5, I'd probably be a little bit hesitant. He's hit this in 4 straight games because his minutes are up 33.1 minutes. Head-to-head games against Dallas, 29.5. So he's getting 4 extra minutes. Yeah, maybe this line is right on the money. I think let's wait and see. I have it as a lean. Mike Conley under in his PRA, but not something I'm willing to bet. I'm happy to hold on that one, but taking note of the lean. So next game, we have some better insights into Mike Conley. But it's also tough, right? In these playoffs, these lines get tighter than my asshole. And right now, that is really tight. So it can be difficult to find an edge. Let's have a quick look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker off the bench. I wonder if he's got anything spicy to him. Points, 6.5. 2 out of his last 5 against Denver. Against Dallas, out of his last 4. His minutes seem okay. Actually, I regret looking at his lines already. I know I'm not going to bet Nickeil Alexander-Walker Newton. But before I depart, yes, let me take a look at line just to see if I may have missed something. Let's filter this to minus 130. So this is filtering to the highest hit rates over the last 10. What are we calling out? Seeing if we missed anything. Kyrie Irving under in his first quarter points. We know about that. We looked at Luka's over in assists. It has been hitting very well as of late, but the hit rate's not good against Minnesota. Karl Anthony Towns under 3.5 assists. It's at minus 140. I would honestly lean that way. He's hit the under in 8 of his last 10 and in most of his games against Dallas. But his last 2 games against Denver, maybe he showed a little bit of something there. So I'm a little cautious on that. Lively, points plus assists. Again, not a great hit rate against Minnesota. His recent form on his points and assists, PRA, Derrick Jones, all of that. Recent form, that makes sense. I think out of all these plays, we've got Luka Doncic for 6.5 points in the first quarter. Great hit rate lately. Great hit rate on the season. Great hit rate against Minnesota. I think that's a fucking banger. If you're crazy, you can take Nickeil Alexander-Walker under 0.5 steals. Now check out 80% hit rate in his last 10 games, 100% hit rate in his last 5, and a 75% hit rate against Dallas so far this season, if you want to look at the under. In terms of steals, yeah, the Mavs, middle of the pack in terms of snap, but I don't know game enough to look at that. The next filter I want to look at is just the head-to-head filter to see who has been cranking what. Now, let's get interesting with it. We've got Kyle Anderson, over 1.5 assists. I question whether he's going to get game time, but he's hit this in 5 consecutive games against Dallas. Looking at his minutes, 20 minutes a night against the Dallas Mavericks. If we look at his last 10, he's hit this in 5 of his last 10, and he's getting 11.9 minutes. So his minutes are on a decline. His averages against Dallas are good, but he's not getting the same number of minutes. Now, this could be an interesting one. I might be the only man on the internet betting this. Kyrie, over 0.5 blocks. He's a small sample size. Hit this in 2 games against Minnesota. In his last 10 games, had a 4-game stretch where he was blocking everybody, but this is not in his wheelhouse. 37% of games he registered a block. Sample size not big enough for me to take that play. The other look here is Tim Hardaway, points plus assists, 5.5. He's hit this in 5 straight games against Minnesota, averaging 19.2. But what we're going to see here is minutes through the roof, 32.6 minutes a night for Tim Hardaway. But if you look at his last 5, he's only playing 15 minutes. Now, if we look at his season data, and if we say he plays, let's just give him between 12 and 18 minutes. When he plays between 12 and 18 minutes, he hits this 5.5 line at 7 out of 13 games, 54%. So if he's going to get that many minutes, that line is smack bang where it needs to be. We've looked at Kyrie in depth. Kyle Anderson has a good hit rate, but again, we know about the minutes. Here's one we didn't factor in. Rudy Gobert, over 2.5 points in the first quarter, and Derrick Jones Jr., 2.5 points in the first quarter. So Rudy in the first quarter has cashed this in 6 straight games against the Dallas Mavericks, 2.5 points. So that's a good read. If we look at his last 10 games, he only cashed this once in the Denver series against the Phoenix Suns. He cashed it in the first 3 games against Phoenix. So Rudy to go over his first quarter points prop, that could be an interesting look. The hit rate is there against Dallas. On the season, it hit at 53%. So this is not an outlier for him to go over. He hit it more than half the time. So I think it's worth investigating. Obviously, I can see his minutes here. I'll look into how many shots he's taking. If Rudy's taking at least 3 shots on average, then 2.5 points might be something I can muck around with. I don't hate that. The chance that he finishes on 2 is quite high, though. But yeah, I don't hate that. He's performed very well against Dallas in the past. Check that out. So if he's averaging 6 points in the first quarter against Dallas, it's basically saying he's making at least 3 buckets against them. So he has to be attempting at least 3 against Dallas. So, yeah, Rudy to go over his first quarter points prop, that could be a good look. Remove the Denver stuff because that series was fucking wild. But let's look at Derrick Jones Jr. 2.5 points in the first quarter, 3 straight games against Minnesota. All of these were this season. Copy. If you look at his last 10, he cashed this in 5 out of his last 10. So that's not the most convincing play there. But at 2.5 points, he just needs to make 1 shot. And in the first quarter, that's when Derrick Jones Jr. is most likely to make a 3-pointer as well. As the game wears on, his shooting only gets worse. But in the first quarter, this man can hit an open 3 with fresh legs. So I might look into that. I'll check to see what his volume looks like in the first quarter as well. And let's check to see if there's anything else of value here. Tim Hardaway we've discussed. Kyrie we've looked at. All right. Yeah, it looks like we've kind of touched on everything that we need to. Well, I've got to say, I'm excited to see this game. This is going to be a great game. Minnesota v. Dallas. We've got some superstars out there, new matchups. It's going to be interesting. Chess, not checkers. So I'm pretty keen to see how these teams match up, what the coaching strategy is going to look like. But for these plays, I'll share what the leans are. I didn't come up with too many in game one of this one, but I'll share the leans. You guys can take a look at that. If you're interested in seeing my final picks, sign up to my Winnables, completely free. The link for that is in the video description as well. Not something I expect too many of you to do, because these types of videos are for me to share the research, and I encourage you to make your own decisions on what the best thing to do is. Use tools like Outlier to do your own research and ultimately make your own decision. It does make it a lot easier if you're making your own plays. If you're just tailing somebody else, it's going to be a very frustrating time for you. But if you make your own decisions, you can learn from them. You're not learning shit when you're just copying somebody else. So check out Outlier, 7-day free trial and shit. If you need some inspiration, check theplayerpropshop.com. I've got a link for that in the video link below. Other than that, I've got to get out there and edit this thing and come up with my final plays. Best of luck to you. Let's go.
Sub to the channel cause your boy's getting busy. Coming to your line from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free, you don't even have to pay me.